All right, here we go. Section 15. Um, it's kind of exciting because we're closing in on the end. I'm going to apologize to Sophie now because Sophie, I didn't get my nails done, so you're just going to have to sort of like block out the giant, fill that needs to happen. Just let it go, okay? But in the meantime, let's talk 15. So we're wrapping up his rebuttal of the Catalanian charge. So we are in 15 and 16, we're kind of like reprising what he said, giving a final summation, and saying we shouldn't have charged him with him. Anyway, this one gets a little like kind of wonky at the end. 16 gets, I don't know, straight up crazy at the end. I don't know. But here we are. So remember that Cicero has thrown all kinds of sort of what do I want to say? Um defenses against Caelius's supposed behavior. He was young. We were all young once. Everybody got taken in by Catiline. Catiline was the most villainous villain that ever was a villain. Okay, all of these things he's thrown in, and now we're kind of like pulling it together. And he says, therefore, right? And it's interesting because he throws all this for before we get to the subject. And I think it's important to say the maledictus, these evil words of sexual misconduct, and unwilling or not unwilling, like most, well, this is most like most arousing prejudice in connection with the conspiracy. So we've got this, and to this prejudice of the conspiracy. Um, he is putting this forward very deliberately, getting the jurors to sort of focus on what Cicero is saying, which is that the defense is just, bad trash talking, Caelius. Okay. So therefore, orato est, speech, your speech, delapsa est, has slipped. You know what? Whatever. All right. Has slipped from, we would say slander, maledictus, from evil words. I suppose we could say slander, from the evil words or slander of sexual misconduct to, and this itself, this ad conjuratonis invidiam, literally is like to this prejudice of the conspiracy. Um, we could even, and I think the book suggests this, to arousing prejudice, prejudice in connect, connection, right? Connection. Oh Lord, with the conspiracy. Okay, so basically, he's saying right here that you all have only, okay, spread false gossip, which is, ironic because that's all Cicero is doing too, of sexual immorality. Now, we haven't gotten to the sexual immorality bit yet. That's actually coming up in 30 to 36 in his relationship with Clodia, who was the bonus question answer on the vocab quiz. Yes, Clodia Polker. Her brother Clodius Polker, of course, is the second prosecutor. Well, either Clodius Polker or one of his freedmen is the second prosecutor in this, okay? Because, of course, Clodia couldn't represent herself as a Roman matron. She was not allowed to appear in court. Okay, so that's the sexual impropriety. And he's like, and you've gone all the way to this like conspiracy theory where Caelius was involved with Catiline. Okay, let's go on. Posituous, and I said you put it. So posituous can mean you are able, and it's like you are able here indeed, but it's more like you are able, like i.e. you have made the accusation that. Here, let's see what I got going on here. Okay, well, I just made it. You put it that, right? Whoops. You put it that, like you put it to them. You suggested that. You accused him of. All right. Enum, I don't really care if you do it or not do it. It's like indeed. So you can throw that in. It always goes in the second word, but you would translate it first. So indeed you put it. And notice here that however, like uncertainly and superficially. So again, Cicero is with every step of the way throwing in uh doubts into the prosecutor. Okay. Indeed, you put it that, and you can almost like in commas, like are in parentheses, and that you did uncertain, oh God, uncertainly and superficially, super, I don't know, officially, whatever. And okay, so you indeed you put it, and that accusation is both superficial and uncertain. I'm sorry, uncertain and superficial. That hunk, this one. Okay, remember the hunk, this one would be back to Caelius, that this one, propter, okay, propter, on account of his friendship with Catiline, was a participant of the conspiracy. Do you guys notice how we've kind of got some interesting word pictures going on here, or interlocked word order? So let me go back through that. You put it that this one, um, that this, I'm sorry, let me do this again. You put it indeed, and that accusation, however uncertain and superficially, that hunk, this one, okay, fuicit, let's go here, propter, on account of his friendship with Catiline, was a participant of the conspiracy. Okay, that this one, on account of, whoops, of his friendship with Catiline, Catiline was, okay, we're in indirect statement again, um, a participant in the conspiracy. You think by now I'd have conspiracy down. Okay. I do want to point out here, look at the way that we have the interlocked word order here with the evil words of sexual immorality, with the with what I want to say, with the prejudice, with this sort of evilness of the conspiracy. Notice that he has your speech has slipped, almost like the verb has slipped in between the words for speech and your, showing the disconnectedness of this guy's ability to give a coherent sentence. Um, Notice here that the hunk is going, well, that this one, on account of this one, friendship with Cataline, and then the participation of the conspiracy. Again, Cataline sort of being tossed in between here. He's always the bad guy. Okay. It's interesting to see how Cicero is manipulating the language to kind of prove his point. All right. Okay. So in this, in quote, excuse me, in this, not only does Schliemann, the accusation, oh, does the accusation non-Harabat not stick, but this part is actually kind of funny. Okay. So not only, okay, in this situation, not only does the accusation not stick, but hardly does the oration of this, what do I say? Dexterity can mean a lot of things. It can mean eloquent, but it can also mean slick talking young man hold together. And I think it's important to notice that Cicero uses the word adolescens here. Adolescens refers to a young man who is not yet 18. The Romans would have seen what I think the actual age is like 13 to 17. I got to double check my ages on that one. But I find it fascinating that he uses that because it is a very subtle, what do we want to call it, diss for the accusation. When you notice someone's years, only this time the years are going against them. Okay. So not stick, but the oration of this, what, no, actually, of the slick talking, ooh, talking young man hardly holds together. Okay. So not only does the crime not stick, but also this speech of this slick talking young man hold together, but scarcely does it hold together. Again, you are very, I don't even know if it's subtle. You're just saying this child should not be in court. I don't know why we're listening to this child give this speech when we know they're just a young man. I'm sure that you guys have heard that, it's a condescending. Well, you are rather young. Okay. All right. So here we go. Cicero is going to keep defending Caelius. We pick up on the qui, which I kind of feel like should be a quote, but and you have the inum again. You remember what enum means? Okay, it was up here. It means indeed. And you pull it forward. Indeed, quo here is going to mean what? I think it makes sense in English because we're going to this tantus fuor. What such great rage, such great rage. Okay, in Caelius. Okay, go down. Here we go. All right, what such great wound. See, now there's a quote here. Okay, what such great wound. Okay, out means either or. Okay, either in his moribus means like custom, um, morals. What's such great wound? Either, whoa, in his, jeez, crackers, his morals and nature, or in the situation. I think ray here can mean thing. Remember, race typically means thing, but it doesn't mean like little things. It means like big picture things. So I would suggest here situation or in the situation and fortune. Okay. Um, So indeed, what such great rage in Kylie's, what great wound, either in his morals and nature or in the situation and fortune. Now, notice there isn't actually, I'm looking at this. No, there isn't actually a verb in that, which is kind of Cicero, right? He's just going to leave it out because we understand. And I think we could say, was there, right? It's not actually there, but I think we can throw it in there. And what he's saying is, what's such great rage or what such wound in his morality and in his nature and in the situation and his fortune would have caused him to join up with the most wicked man on earth, which was, of course, Catiline. I think one of the suggestions that I've read with the Catalinian conspiracy dealt with young rich men chafing under their father's control. They wanted control of their own money, they wanted control over their life. And let's not forget that under Roman law, a man was under his was under the thumb of his oldest living male relative. So if your paternal grandfather were still alive, he would be in charge of you and your household. You didn't get your own autonomy according to sort of strict traditional mores. So if we were to look at my family tree, okay, so we have my grandfather Ed, who married my grandmother Cecilia. Okay, they had three sons. Ed, very Roman, right? Very Roman. Ed, okay, Rich, and Bruce. Okay, while Ed Sr. was alive, Ed, Rich, and Bruce all were under his control. Now, even if they had children, which they did do, because my my uncle Ed had, wait for it, Ed, oh, Jeepers Creepers, and Alan. Okay, this is my dad. He had me and my brother. And my uncle Bruce never had children. All right, so now we have this generation and this generation who would still be under the total and complete control of my grandfather. Okay, now let's say we all got married and had kids. Okay, we're running out of room here, but you guys know I have AJ. My brother has Houston. Ren and Rhett. Don't even get me started on those names. Anyway, uh, so now we have four generations who would all be under the absolute control of my grandfather. None of these people, even though I am well over the age of majority, and even if you turned to 18 or 21, everything that you did, owned, everything would be under the control of the grandfather. Now, if my grandfather passed away, and he passed away a while ago, then each of these three boys would be allowed to set up their own household. But still, okay, my brother and I would be under the total control of my father, along with all of our children, especially the male children. Now, Ren, as a girl, could marry into her own family, and that would be a different thing. But the boys would always be under the direct control of their paternal father, okay, or of their paternal grandfather if he were still alive. And a lot of young men sort of chafed under that, right? They got upset because they wanted to go out, they wanted to make money, they wanted to go have a family, they wanted to go, I don't know, live it up in the Caribbean. Of course, Romas didn't know about the Caribbean, but you know what I mean, okay? So, but they weren't allowed to do that without their father's control. So when we talk about the wound happening either in the situation or fortune, what we're talking about is sort of that age-old upset. I want to live my own life. It's my money. Why can't I do it my way? And the parental control going, yeah, it's not your money. It's mine. You're going to do what I tell you to. Okay. Let's see. And he's going to go on. So not only would there have been some sort of ridiculous rage or fury or some sort of, I don't know what happening in Cataline, but he also says ubi dienque or where. Okay. Um, do I want to say where? Yes, I'm going to say where. Or where ever. Maybe that's the best way to say this. Okay. Actually, there's no where or, it's just where dienque. It's like even. Where even um, is the name of Caelius. Notice again, we've got this raking here. Oops. Okay. Is the name of Caelius, nomen Caelius, name of Caelius, heard in that, notice the ista, suspicion. Okay. And he's saying it again. It's like, where even in the trial of Catiline was the name of Caelius ever mentioned? And of course, Cicero can say that because Cicero was the one who made the accusations against Catiline. So if Cicero says Caelius never showed up, then he didn't show up. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why Caelius didn't show up. Maybe one of those is because he was Cicero's protege, right? Maybe Cicero just kept him out. Maybe Caelius' dad paid to keep him out. Maybe he wasn't even involved. We don't know that, but there's, a lot of subtext there. All right. Loquor. I love this. I have, actually not have, I speak. Sorry, I speak too much, tantamum, about these things. Ooh, uh, about these things, um, minime dubida, of great doubt, of the most doubt. So what's he saying? He's like, I've already spoken too much about these things, and there's a lot of doubt. I shouldn't even have said that, He's like, I've talked too much about this already. Um, they're all lies. Why are you listening? I love it because Cicero's not done yet. Hoc tamen, however, I will say this. Well, however I say this, sorry, it's not future. However I say this. Love it. You think he's done? He's not done. However, I say this. In English, I feel like we would say, however, I'm going to say this. I will say this. Non modo, not only, not only, okay, if, oh my God, excuse me for just a second. Sorry. Okay, too much tea. All right. However, I say this, not only if, and you need another non in here, and it's kind of missing, but it's understood. non modo and the nisi, not only if he had not been an ally of the conspiracy, oops, okay, this is conspiracy, but unless ooh, he, oh my gosh, he had been, Fuisid, he had been Inimicius, the most hostile enemy of that wickedness, hostile, and oh my gosh, enemy of that wickedness, wickedness, wickedness. I feel like we did this in class and that was right. Of that wickedness. Okay. So, however, I say this, I keep wanting to make it future. It's not future. However, I say this. Not only if he had not been a companion of that conspiracy, but also the most incredible enemy of that wickedness. Okay, now let me pick up the last one. Someone out of Numquam. Never, Numquam here meaning never, never Wolowisit would he have wanted, never would he have wanted Commendare to entrust his own adolescence. I mark this as accusative. It is not accusative. It's another adverb. It's a tricky adverb, meaning as most especially. Entrust his own, actually, I'm sorry, it's an indeclinable adjective. I lied. Yeah, it's an indeclinable adjective. All right, entrust his own youth, most most especially to the accusation of the conspirators of, well, I think you could say conspirators. It means of the conspiracy. Accusation of the conspiracy. All right, what does this refer to? This refers to, whoops. Okay, never would he have wanted to entrust his own youth, most especially to the accusation of the conspiracy. What is this referring to? This is referring to when Caelius prosecuted someone named Gaius Antonius Hybrida. Looks like hybrid. Hold on, let me write that down. Okay, so Caelius prosecuted this guy who was apparently in tight and stayed loyal to Catiline. I need to do some more research, but he might have been one. When Catiline gets exiled, several people recanted, several people, like, like any sort of plot that starts to dissolve, people run away like rats deserting a sinking ship. But some of them stayed with Catiline. They stayed loyal to him and they ran off into the foothills and they kind of escaped for a while until they all got caught and killed. What are you going to do? And he was prosecuting Gaius and Tonian. Uh-oh. So my laptop's battery lasts 2 seconds now. Hi. Hybrida? Okay, in March 59 BC. Okay, now he was in tight with Catiline. Now here's the interesting thing. Caelius doesn't go after him for the conspiracy with Catiline. He goes after him for the corrupt two bars. I'm gonna go corrupt maladministration. Administration of Macedonia. Yeah. And this is what happened to a lot of those conspirators, okay? They didn't get taken down for treason against the empire. They got taken down for like other corrupt charges. And he did end up having to be exiled out of Rome for a while because of this. It's like, I don't know, embezzling or I don't know, misuse of funds or whatever it was. But so what we're suggesting and what Cicero is ending this with is that, A, Caelius must have been insane if he was in charge of this. Caelius not insane, therefore Caelius was not in charge of this. But he's also saying he wouldn't have wasted his entire youthful, like, whatever, like his youthful rise to fame based on the prosecution of another of the Catalonian conspiracies, which of course doesn't necessarily make sense because what's the first thing you do when you're accused of something? You try to shift the blame onto someone else, right? You don't say, "Oh, my bad, I did it." Well, okay, some of you probably do. A lot of people don't. Okay. What you get is, ah, man, I don't know why you're not yelling at so and so. They're doing it too. Or, Miss Campbell, you only catch me. You don't see everybody else doing it. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That doesn't mean you didn't do it. But your first reaction is, if I can kick the blame onto someone else, I won't get in trouble. So Cicero is ignoring that. Cicero is merely pointing out that, only an honest person would actually prosecute a wrongdoer. It's just it's an interesting thing. But again, with Cicero's arguments, he kind of works out. So this is one of the last chunks. We go to 16, which is also very short and relatively easy. Okay, compared to some of the other ones, this wasn't isn't too bad. All right, so again, he is wrapping up his argument, defending Caelius against this accusation of being too friendly with Catiline. Okay, I'm going to end this, and you guys can take notes on it.